Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. Let's talk about math and hockey. We'll talk about the basics of hockey, we'll talk about how math is involved, and we'll go from there. So, let's get into it. When it comes to hockey, the basic idea is that you are using a stick to hit a disc across a field to score a point. Now, with that in mind, it's normally a team sport. There's various fields that you could play on, and some strategy that has to be employed. Now, on the base level, there's math involved, if not just because it's a game where you're trying to score points, right? Seriously though, right? That sounds really basic, but that says a lot. Math is everywhere. It's in everything. It can be simple. It can be complex. It could be layers to it. Now, going back to the beginning, there's math in the game, how it's scored, but also the equipment that you're using, the fields that you play on, and so much more. Now, if we talk about the equipment for a second, right? You have your hockey stick, and it's like, well, there's math in how that stick. Sorry, there's math in what that stick is composed of. There's math in the dimensions of that stick, any rules and regulations that come with that if you're playing professionally, or in other avenues for that matter. But there's also math in the puck, right? The disc, whatever you want to call it. There's math in its size, what it's composed of, in its weight, and how things are distributed with that. Not only is there math in these basics as far as the equipment is concerned, um, there's math on whatever field you're playing on. Math in what it's composed of, whether we're talking about like street, floor, ice, whatever the case may be, because there's different kinds of hockey, right? Like, I mean, there's floor hockey, roller hockey, ice hockey, which a lot of people are probably thinking of as just hockey. But there's also underwater hockey as well. Who knew? Um, but anyway, there's math on the terrain that you're playing on, right? There's math on that field. Um, what it's composed of, sure, and the effects of what it's composed of on the equipment and on you. But there's also math on the dimensions of that field, how big it's allowed to be, how long, how wide, whatever. There's math across the board with that. There's math on the amount of people on your team, on the opponent's team, and what you're doing. Because you might be trying to hit that puck across the field and score a goal, but while you're doing that, you have your teammates, and you have to keep track of what they're doing while you're keeping track of what you're doing, and at the same time keeping track of what your opponents are doing. You have to be able to like pass when you need to, or try to just like not get that puck stolen from you. And meanwhile, right, you're hitting that puck, and with that hitting of that puck, you have your stick, and you're moving with certain motion, certain position, certain angle, certain force, certain speed, and a lot's going on between what you're doing with that stick and what's happening with that puck, and you're keeping track of all that, whether you're conscious of it or not. And I think that's interesting. It's just like there's math across the board at every conceivable level, and it's happening really, really quickly. Um, and while you're doing that, like I said, you have to be monitoring, your opponents and your teammates. And not only is there mapping, that stick and that puck, you might also have protective gear on because a lot's happening very quickly, very roughly. So you have to be careful in some cases. But yeah, so there's not only math with the stuff that I said, but just on that larger level because, like, right, you're dealing with rules, you're dealing with regulations, you're dealing with money, sponsorships, funding, advertising, marketing, you name it. And then just back to the game in and of itself, there's so much going on, and if you're on skates, whether they're roller skates or ice skates, you have to be considering how you move on those things as you're moving across the field. And then not only that, there's math in how you're doing with those, but also just the equipment and how that equipment functions or should function, and how you're maintaining that equipment. There's math and also how that field is being maintained and what's going on physics wise with everything. And then you got to figure, you might have players who are training and being careful of the food that they take in and what that food does. Or if you're just playing on your own, you might still be doing that, and like even if you're not like professional. Um, but there's something to be said about that. And then also, as you're playing, right, not only are you scoring points, but you're accruing stats. And if you're in the professional, or sorry, if you're at the professional level, people are keeping track of those stats, right? And there's math just in the stats themselves, but also keeping track of it and making predictions based on those stats. Um, there's a lot of other things that you could talk about, but I hope that what I talked about gets you thinking, right? Because there's math everywhere, in everything, and I think sports can be such a wonderful way to see that among other things. So yeah, I'll see you in the future.